Looks like Yuna is ready on the board here. Um, you'll hear that beep before every dive, and that's to indicate to the divers that the judges are ready and that the referee is ready. So before each dive, you'll hear kind of a beep or peep, and that's to help the divers know that it's time to start. And the judges will actually start judging directly after that beep. So the divers need to be in form. You have Yuna starting with inward dive straight. Very difficult dive as you're spinning forward. You need to keep your body straight. So you have to generate both distance from the board and height as well in a straight position. So you see there's a little bend in her hips, but she's rewarded with 6.5. Pretty good. Now we have Zoe here. Beautiful, elegant dive for Zoe. Maybe a little bit out, probably wants to be a little bit higher, but still 6.5 sevens. Zoe grew up in hometown Växjö, but has moved to Jönköping to study and dive. So she actually goes to a sports high school in Jönköping. Vilma actually has a similar story. She grew up in Västerås, but moved down to Malmö to study and dive with their sports high school. So we have Vilma doing back dive pike. A little bit of a break in the legs there. So you can see we see both of her legs for a split second there. The judges will end up deducting a little bit there, but she still ends up with 6.5 there. These girls at the end of the first 5 rounds would like to be somewhere in the realm of 175 points. So a little over 30 points they're trying to shoot for on each of these dives. So if you see those dives a little under 30, most of the girls want to be over 30 on these dives. And Aliana from Germany, forward 1.5, very nice dive, little far out. As you can see, she's getting those 6.5s, not quite sevens there. Got Nina, also from Team Germany, inward dive straight. We saw Yuna do this a little bit earlier. And as I was mentioning, it's a very technically difficult dive because you have to push both away from the board backwards and generate some spin forwards while holding your body straight. So there's not a lot of things that will help you generate speed. But Nina does a really great job here. Very powerful. You have to use your legs really to push through that board. And she's rewarded with 7 there. And you can see 37, almost 38 points for her. So that's a really good start for Nina. We've got Lida here doing inward dive straight, same dive as Nina just did. She will want to follow in suit, try to really push that board down to get herself away. Um, Very nice. You can see there's a little round in that upper body there, so she might get some deductions there compared to Nina. Lita actually has written in that she does a very set. She has very set habits before she dives, so she always wears her same lucky necklace after every practice and every competition, which has a diver and a 4 clover. So Lita, a little bit with some superstition there, but it's nice to have some habits. Now we go with Caitlin, inward dive pike. So as you can see, some of the other competitors are doing it in straight, and that's mostly due to a DD difference, that degree of difficulty. So Caitlin's doing it in pike, um, most likely because she can do this dive really well. And as you can see, she still gets sevens there. Um, the pike being easier than the straight, having a lower degree of difficulty, but if you can execute the dive well, it ends up paying off really well. Now we have Beatrice from Italy, inward dive pike, same as Caitlin. Very nice. And you can see she doesn't quite jump as high as some of the other competitors have done. So she's getting into that pike really early, maybe cutting off a little bit of that jump, not receiving all that height. Still receiving really good scores there by virtue of the entry and the beautiful aesthetic lines she's doing. Viola, back dive pike. Very nice dive here for Viola. Really well controlled. A big portion of these compulsory dives is demonstrating to the judges that you have control and can execute the dive with power and grace as you're moving. Um, Viola doing a great job there, 7.5. Got Jessica doing front 1.5 here. Very powerful jump here for Jessica. As you can see, she's really high in this hurdle step. And we'll talk a little bit about hurdles when they're doing forward facing dives, that being the fronts, reverses, and some of the twisters. They'll do a walk or what we call an approach to the end of the board. The rule there being you have to jump off of 1 foot onto two, and beautiful hurdle step for Team GB right there. Now we've got Nicole doing inward dive pike. And so all of the competitors in their inwards will be doing either inward dive pike or inward dive straight. I don't think we have anybody doing it in tuck so far. Nicole not quite getting all the way there straight before she enters into the water. So she's receiving some 6.5s there. We're starting our next round there. And as you can see, Yuna doing that hurdle we were talking about here, jumping off that 1 foot here onto the two. They're trying to generate as much power and height as possible here. Yuna getting 6, 7.5, 6.5s there, above the 66 point mark. Um, Decent start for Yuna. We'll want to continue that going forward. As we have Zoe here.
I repeat, six, seven, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5.
Oh, it looks like they might have misclicked there. So we had a 6 and then a 7 and a 7.5. So the judges can do that if they notice that the table may have read a score incorrectly, or that they sometimes will misclick, meaning they press the half when they hadn't intended to. They can correct that right away. It's not uncommon to see, and it's important that the scoring be correct, both for the judges and for the divers. Now we see Zoe having a little trouble getting her legs up there. You can see there's a little hesitancy there lifting the legs up. She still does a fantastic job to save it here, getting a good entry there, but maybe not quite as fast as she's used to. So she gets that arch in her back to try and save that dive. Does a great job, still receives those 7s. Now we've got Vilma doing reverse dive pike. Uh, and we see this hurdle again here. Very powerful step here. The divers do want to be as close to the end of the board as they can without getting off the end of the board. Vilma, you see, has a little bit of space there. Sometimes they do that to be safe. Vilma getting her 6.5s, maybe leaving a little bit short. You can see kind of that backsplash going towards the left of your screen there. Aliana doing back dive pike, same as what Zoe did before. This pike position, we can talk a little bit about the basics here. The legs are attempting to be as straight as possible with a really fine toe point. They'll just bend at the hips here, trying to touch their upper body to the legs. And if you can see a little daylight in between their body and their legs, they want to try and squeeze that a little bit more to get more of a pike shape there. Nina doing a really good job here. Oh, not Nina. Let's see. Our diver was Aliana, who just dove there. Really nice dive, back dive, straight 7s. We've got Nina, front 1.5 pike here. Very beautiful dive for Nina. And like we were talking about, that pike position does make for a really pretty position here if you can get that chest squeezed on the legs, which Nina does really well, right in the middle of that flip there. Now I've got Lita, front 1.5, same dive. Also very nice there for Lita. She might have missed her hands there on the entry. As you see, when the divers enter into the water, they're going to try and pull the water to the sides there, create air pockets to the side. That's to minimize the splash. So if you can see on your screen after they dive, you might see 3 bubbles coming up there. And that's because that entry, they're trying to minimize the splash as they're going in the water. Front 1.5. Really high dive there for Caitlin. As you can see, she has a ton of height there, but maybe not the same pike shape that the other divers has, but she's going to get rewarded just by virtue of being so high. You can see she's spinning above that 3-meter board that you can use as a reference there. So she's really jumping high, over 2 meters of height there, um, just off the board. Beatrice, same dive. Very nice pike shape for her. As you can see, the legs are maybe going over just a little bit there at the end. Some of the judges might deduct for that, but still really, really beautiful pike shape here. Very nice entry, and you can even hear sometimes the entry sound. It might be more common to hear it off of the platform dives, but even on the 1 meter, many of these divers are so talented that they can get that ripping sound. It'll sound like paper ripping as they enter into the water. Now we've got Viola, inward dive straight. I've seen a few of these before. Again, really, really difficult because you have to use your legs so much just to press that board down and get your body straight moving in. Really great. You really do want to see that straight position rotating all the way through. Viola getting straight sevens, 1 7.5, almost 38 points. Really, really nice start for Viola so far. Got Jessica, inward dive pike. So the same dive, but electing to do it in this pike position we're talking about so much. Very nice. And you can see Jessica actually starts that pike position pretty early. Um, she's getting a decent bit of height here from her legs, but this pike is initiated really, really fast off the board. So she's got to get straight as soon as she possibly can to stop that dive from over rotating. Does a great job with that. Still on those sevens. So all of these ladies very consistent, very stable so far. We really haven't seen anything below a 6 so far. So props to these ladies. Back dive pike, 1 meter. All right, there we go. This might be one of our first missteps of the competition so far. We see that 1 5.5 there. We want to get into that pike a little bit more, reach back for the water a little bit sooner so you can get to a vertical position. The judges are really looking for that vertical entry where the divers are entering into the water exactly 90 degrees to that surface. Yuna, same dive as Jessica just did. We're now starting round 3. Very nice entry for Yuna. And you can see those bubbles kind of pop up there. Yuna really doing a good job pulling herself into the water, rewarded with 6.5s and sevens. Um, we can now start taking a look at their scores as we've gone through about 3 rounds. It's easier to take a look at where the girls are matching up with each other in their overall average of these first 3 dives. Most divers trying to shoot for being at 100 or above here, hopefully 110 here. Zoe right over the 100 mark, 34 points here with her reverse dive pike. Same as her back dive, a much higher jump here for her and really strong legs. So nice lines for Zoe. Keeping pace with the rest of the girls here, right around 102 points for her. Vilma, inward dive straight, a little bit higher degree of difficulty here, so she might be able to pick up a few more points here if well executed. She actually does a really good job generating the power a little bit further back, so not quite getting that 37, 38 points we've seen from some of the other girls on this dive, but still above 30 points for her in her inward dive category. So keeping pace, maybe just a little under 100. Aliana reverse dive pike. We've seen some nice lines from Aliana so far. Um, Maybe not quite holding that straight position out of the pike after she touches her toes here. So she's just sliding by. As you can see, there's a little arch here as she enters into the water, maybe over creating that C or bridge position out of her dives. So she pulls her feet past vertical. You'll see them kind of pointing towards the right of your screen. We've got Nina doing back dive pike here on 1 meter. Really, really nice dive from Nina. As you can see, it's very, very strong entry here, strong body line entering into the water, just like a knife. 7, 7.5. Good start for Nina. Very high jump for Leda. As you can see, it might be a little soft in her exit from her pike. So instead of getting those 7.5s and 8s, she might be stuck with her sevens. Still very good dive for Lita. She was actually in third last round. Currently sitting in second place right behind Nina. So she'll be fighting for a podium spot, possibly. Got Caitlin, back dive pike. Also very well executed back dive. these girls are really looking for that stability so they can let their skill set shine in those last 4 dives, but these first 5, they need to keep pace. We talked a little bit in some of the previous competitions that for the juniors, these first 5 dives are a really important portion of their dive lists. If they're at international competitions, the prelims will consist of a full list, but the finals will only have their optional dives to be redone, which means these first 5 dives will stay with them through the whole competition. So making sure that they're stable and no big misses in these first 5 is very important for a lot of these divers who are at an internationally high level. Beatrice, beautiful back dive here, as you can see this wonderful tight toe point here, squeezing herself into the water. Maybe a little extra arch there, but still 7.5 for her. Viola um, had phenomenal first 2, way above the 35-point average, looking to do a front 1.5. There we go. Zoomed out, we can see Viola. Okay, maybe a little timid here on both the hurdle and the 1.5. She might not get those 7.5s or sevens here. As you can see, 6.5s, because we are a little bit slow, maybe little short of vertical. As you can see, our cameraman's kind of jumping around here, and that's because the girls can choose whatever board they liked to dive from, which means they have 4 different boards they can dive off of. There's no difference in terms of judging. It can change a little bit the perspective, but most of the divers will. Ooh, Jessica just pulling past a little bit there. As you can see, as she touches her toes, she's kind of falling past vertical there. And so that might be our first miss where we're below 5s. And that's just because those feet go so far past vertical. But like we were saying, the divers can choose to dive from whichever board they choose. And most will choose just based on the feel of the board. So in their practicing, they'll be choosing a board that suits them and suits their feelings. Nicole, big hurdle step here. As you can see, she's jumping off 1 foot onto 2. Most of those other divers we've seen doing 2 feet to 1 foot. That's a stylistic choice. Many divers will figure out what fits their balance better. But as you can see, Nicole just a little forward going. You can see Yuna there in comparison to Nicole jumps off 2 onto 1 back to 2, doing the same dive here. So 2 feet, 1 foot, and then 2 feet here. Not quite her best dive today. Little too far out to get those big scores. So she's getting those 5.5s, not quite 6s here. We've got Zoe doing inward dive straight. Very nice lines here for Zoe standing there. The posture is really important to show the judges in your starting position. So you have control and great balance before you begin. Zoe doing a pretty good job. There might be some slight bends in there, but she's still looking at straight 7s after that 6.5 and one of those 7s are removed. The judging scoring we can talk about really quickly for those of you at home that aren't uh, veteran divers. What they do with a 5 judges system is take away the top score and the low score, leaving the 3 median scores there. Here we have Vilma doing front 1.5. Very strong high dive there. Maybe falling past vertical here right on the end there. So not quite getting those huge scores we've seen from everybody else. You can see there's a little splash towards the left. So she's left with some 6s, but still very solid. Vilma not missing a dive so far. Liana, inward dive straight. Right at the 100 mark so far. Okay, we see there's a little bend in her hip there. She might not be getting really, really big scores, but the entry is very nice and the straight position is very nice. Still just under 37 points, so that'll be a good boost for Aliana. Got Nina, who's our current leader, reverse dive pike. Very beautiful dive here. We can talk a little bit about the scoring here. So when the divers get these scores, that top score, meaning one of those 7.5s, and the bottom scores, meaning 1 7, will be taken away, leaving Nina with 2 7.5s and a 7. And that raw score will then be multiplied by the DD to give you your total score, DD being degree of difficulty. Lita there having a fantastic dive there, but you see she actually pikes as she's going back into the water, so she's going to have a small deduction there. Very high jump here, but as you can see, as she goes back into the water, you can see her legs kind of fall back towards the right, and there's a small deduction for that, not holding the straight line. Here we're going to Caitlin, reverse dive. A little bit of a distance there. As you can see, she starts a little far back from the end of the board here, where her feet are, and then she's jumping forward to make sure she's got a safe distance from the board. What it ends up doing is creating a little bit of a deduction. So the divers do want to be as close to the board as they can while still maintaining a safe distance. So there is a Goldilocks zone or a sweet spot that they do want to land. Um, from my Swedish viewers home, we would call that a lagom distance from the board. We've got Beatrice also doing a reverse dive. Ooh, difficult there for Beatrice. Having a hard time getting her pike all the way up, so she's leaving a little bit short. So you're going to see those fives and five and a halves there because she's not quite completing that full half rotation. These reverse dives that we've been seeing a lot of, as you might have deduced, the reverse positioning means that you're moving forwards but rotating backwards, being a little more complex than the back dives that you might see where they're facing backwards and spinning backwards. So Viola also doing reverse dive here. Very, very nice dive for Viola. As you can see, she just knifes into the water here. Really clean entry, getting straight sevens. The counterpart to the reverse dive would be the inwards here, where they're facing forward or facing backwards, jumping backwards, but spinning forwards. So kind of counterbalancing acts. Ooh, and we have Jessica just floating past vertical one more time. Um, as you can see, she gets a really high jump here, but doesn't quite hold that straight line going in the water. And so her feet just pass by vertical. And so she's getting those scores under 6. Um, so she'll be looking to make up some points as we get into the optional rounds. Here you go, Nicole. Um, I'll point out once more that Nicole is one of the few divers today that has a hop step from 1 foot to 1 foot. The other divers doing 2 to 1. Um, Very nice 1.5 here, maybe a little far out and not quite finishing to that vertical position, uh, but still 5.5. She also be looking to make up some points in the optional rounds. Now we're starting our very last round of the compulsories. Um, these girls are diving at a lightning pace. We're going very quickly. We'll see a lot of this back 1.5 with a half twist, some front 1.5s with a full twist, reverse 1.5s with a half twist here in this last round. Yuna doing a very nice job controlling her twisting motion. They want to be able to demonstrate that they're initiating their twist after leaving the board. There is a deduction if it looks like the twist is manifestly done from the board, meaning they're using the board to initiate twist. Um, Now we've got Zoe, like we mentioned before. We'll see a front 1.5 with a full twist here. Very, very nice dive for Zoe. Maybe a little short on this dive. She'd like to finish this whole dive above the 1 meter. She's doing a little bit of her finishing, as you can see, right below that 1 meter. So she's not going to get those really high scores, but she's on pace to have a fantastic first five, right at the 180 mark, as we mentioned. Above 175 is generally considered somewhere where you're going to have a fighting chance. Very nice. That might be Vilma's best dive of her first five today. And so she's going to get well over 40 points, right close to that 170 mark. So she's not out of the fight yet, but she'll want to make up a few more points in the last four. Aliana doing the same dive, front 1.5, full twist. And we see Aliana taking off from the board a little far away from the edge, which makes it both less bouncy and is actually going to push you further out as you have to lean to go and generate some of that space from you and the board. Aliana having lower scores there by virtue of the lower height and takeoff from the not quite being from the end of the board. Here we've got Nina, our current leader. Really nice approach here, as you can see, really straight lines with the body, straight arms. She has a little bit of a lean there, so they might be a little far out. She might be looking not quite at straight sevens here, more 6.5s and sixes.
Lita,
Um,
back 1.5 somersaults,
Still our leader after those first five, and I imagine she'll be either in the first or the second place going into the optional rounds. She's right at 187, followed by Zoe so far. Still a few divers to dive. Lita doing back 1.5. We saw this from her countrywoman, Yuna, a little bit earlier. Very well executed dive here. There's a lot of strength in these legs for Lita, trying to line this dive up. Maybe not the best entries she can do, but still 6.5s and sevens in a fighting chance. We'll start to see a little more separation. Right now, we may have some separation in the 10s to 15s of points, but as we get into the optional points, or the optional dives, the point differences can vary quite a bit, and we'll see some separation between the leaders. We've got Caitlin. Caitlin electing to do a much more complex dive, that back 1.5, 1.5. And that's usually because these divers do want to hit that 9.0 that we mentioned before for the aggregate of their first five dives. So by upping the degree of difficulty in one of their dives, they can hit that 9.0. So Caitlin doing inward dive pike elects to do back 1.5 with 1.5 twists, as opposed to the Team Netherlands, who was doing just a half twist there. You've got Beatrice, forward 1.5 with a full twist. Beautiful dive here. Very well executed. Very nice lines. Straight sevens for her. 46 points. She's right at that 176, 175 mark we've been talking about. It's a nice benchmark for these ladies from 1 meter to know that they've had a solid first five. Um, Here we got Viola. Full twist. Oh, we can back up a little bit. She's on the far 1 meter. Very nice. Okay. As we can see, her hurdles, both for the front 1.5 and for this dive, look like she's a little bit timid. And what I mean by that is she's not moving with a ton of confidence there. And so it looks like she's holding back a little bit of energy. That might just be for balance, or that might be how she does it. But again, she's getting sixes here instead of those really big explosive 7.5s for her dives. Really nice hurdle for Jessica. Very well balanced here. Beautiful twisting motion. Might be a little bit short, but she should get 6.5s here. 42 points. That's a nice finish for her first five.
Half twist, free position.
Now we're moving on to Nicole from Switzerland. Very nice straight position from Nicole. Might want to see a little more piking at the end there, so she has more time to get straight at the end of her dive there. 5.5s for her
Fine ground. So now we quickly
as we
find
finish off those
ground.
first five.
We have an off
We can
twist.
take a quick look. We have Nina followed by Viola, Zoe in that third place spot, but Beatrice and Lita are not so far behind, right at that 175, 176. We also have Aliana and Caitlin, 175 and 173.
And that
So
brings us
just
to
down
round
to
number 6.
the first six,
Inward.
we've got a lot of
1.5
divers in
somersault.
contention
Pike position for
um,
Viola.
that aren't so far away. Even Yuna, in comparison, might be 20 points away from first place, but 20 points is possible to make up in four dives. If some of the other divers have a little bit of a miss here or there, if you can stay consistent, um, it's quite possible to pick up 20 points in four dives. Yuna starting with inward 1.5 pike here. Um, Very nice dive here. She'd probably like to see a little more power from her legs so she can finish this dive a little more above the board there. But straight sixes, very stable, solid. Yuna having a solid day, can we can say. Zoe, front 2.5 pike. As you can see, she's a little, oh, wow, very nice save. In this hurdle step, you can see her foot almost touches the end, and that's less ideal because she then has to make sure she doesn't jump off the board. Doing a really good job generating speed there. That might be one of her best front 2.5 pikes she's had in a competition. So really good job by Zoe there. keeping pace with the leaders here. Vilma, or I should say setting the pace because she is one of the earlier divers in the rounds. Vilma back 1.5 pike. Very well executed back 1.5 here. We might like to see a little tighter pike shape here, but she's landing straight on her head. Really nice to have some consistency here. So 5.5s, Vilma can be happy with. Move on to the next dive. Aliana doing the same dive here. Okay, Aliana doing a really good job of keeping a close distance to the board, so she's not falling back very much at all. Not quite hitting that straight position. She has to overarch to pull her legs to give the impression that she's going in vertically. So she's getting some sixes there, a little bit higher scores than what we saw from Vilma. Still solid. A lot of these girls are really looking for making sure that their base is solid and then really letting their skill set shine through. Nina, our current leader, let's see what she does for her back 1.5. Very nice dive. Maybe overdoing that come out here, overarching, pulling her feet past. You can see kind of that splash going towards the left side here as she goes in the water, pointing that way. So not rewarded with those sevens here, but not a huge miss for her. She's just behind Zoe now with 226. Zoe having 228. Still 3 rounds to come. Lita, very well executed dive here. You see a lot of control there in both her start and her legs. Getting 6.5s. There's 1 7 there, one judge, but she'll be happy with those 6.5s. Moving on to our next dive. Caitlin, inward 1.5. Like we said, these inward spinning dives, they are moving forward. So there is an aspect of psychology here that you don't want to be too close to the board as you are spinning at the board. So you have to generate some speed. Caitlin doing a fantastic job jumping away from the board, creating some height. 6.5s and sevens is her reward for that. Um, Maybe wants to get straighter a little bit sooner, but that's a really solid dive for Caitlin. Beatrice, front 2.5 in tuck. We saw Zoe do this dive a little bit earlier in pike. There is a little bit lower of a DD here, degree of difficulty for Beatrice, but it might be that she can perform it much better in the tuck position and therefore chooses to do it in tuck. Uh, and that's just going to give her a higher total score. And that's really what makes the difference for the diveless. Ooh, Beatrice, well, she is spinning really well. High jump here is well short of vertical here, so she's not going to get much above a 6 here. Leaving her legs there. They're kind of pointing towards the right of your screen there, back towards that far wall. So we can tell that it's not 90 degrees to the surface. Viola, reverse 1.5 with a half twist. Um, we saw some twisting dives in the last round. Viola electing to do another twisting dive here in round 6. And that's a very well executed dive, very stable in the air. She might want to have a little more press through here so that it doesn't feel like she's arching into the dive, kind of jumping a little bit more, but still rewarded with 6, 6.5. We've got Jessica front 2.5, this time in pike. So similar to what Zoe did, piked as opposed to what Beatrice did. Very high jump here. Really nice dive. Just not quite finishing there on the end. As you can see, as the divers were released from their pike here, see after she finishes her 2.5 flips here, she's going to release this pike, but she needs to hold that body tension to allow her body to get into the water straight. And as you can see, the body tension isn't quite there, letting her legs go past vertical a little bit. And now Nicole's doing same dive, but in that tuck position we were talking about. Ooh. So as you can see, her hurdle step is quite far to the end of the board, and so there is a risk here. As it is close to the end of the board, she's jumping forward and doesn't even have time to do an extra arm swing. That extra arm swing generating a lot more of that press into the end of the board. So she holds her arms up, skipping an arm swing, and that's to save her balance, but does leave her well short of vertical. She won't be super pleased with that, but hopefully she can do a few more dives in the following rounds that will help boost her score a little bit. Now we have Yuna starting round 7. Little bit short there for Yuna. As you can see, she doesn't quite finish her pike shape here. You can see there's a little daylight between her upper body and her lower body. And by virtue of that, it's not as fast of a spinning dive as she may be used to. So she's leaving it a little short, not quite completing that full 1.5 rotation here. Got Zoe reverse 1.5. This pike is a little bit new for Zoe, so she's added in to increase her degree of difficulty. But looks like a really, really good dive for her. Very nice takeoff, maybe a little past vertical, but a really great choice for her to change into the pike and increase her degree of difficulty. Just having a little overarch on the end there. Still rewarded 5.5 and 6. I'm sure she'll be happy with that. Solid reverse 1.5. Ilma doing the same dive. So very well executed. Maybe a little short of vertical here, but still a solid dive for Vilma. She's right on that pace here to keep up with the other divers. Maybe a little short there. Aliana, reverse 1.5 pike, same dive as our previous 2 competitors. Okay, and you see Aliana maybe a little bit back on the board, so she's trying to use her hips to generate some space away from her in the board. There you can see kind of that arching as she leaves the board. That's going to increase the chances that you're arching on the way out as your body has started with an arch. Pulling her past vertical, not quite getting those high scores she would have wanted. Now we have Nina also doing the same dive. Really nice dive here for Nina. Very well executed. Very stable in this hurdle steps, as you can see here. So she's the first one getting straight 7s on a reverse 1.5. So that is the best reverse 1.5 we've seen so far. That's going to vault her into first place here, creating a little separation between her and Zoe. Um, reverse 1.5 for Lita. So we've seen a lot of the same dive. A lot of times, seeing the same dive a lot of times in a row, you can start to pick out some of the differences here in mechanics and technique. So really kind of pick out the differences, why they're getting those 7s, why they're getting those 6s, why they're getting those 6.5s. So you start to see some of those knee bends or the entries. And that's what really separates out the good divers from the mediocre. Caitlin back 1.5. Now, like I mentioned before, the reverse and the backs are kind of related in the sense that they're both spinning backwards. The backs obviously were rotating backwards and jumping backwards, but the mechanics can be very similar here. So we had Caitlin doing a very solid back 1.5 for those 5.5s and 6s. Beatrice doing the same back 1.5 as we just saw from Caitlin. Beatrice taking her time, making sure she's ready before she starts her oscillations. Those rocks on the board here. Really straight line from her legs and her arms. A little bit of a tough pike there. As you can see, she's not quite generating as much speed as she probably would have wanted, leaving it a little difficult to finish that dive. Her legs kind of falling short of vertical, pointing back towards that far wall to the right here. Got Viola doing front 2.5 pike. Now, Viola does have a medal at the European Junior Championships on this event, but it was in the B category, so that was when she was 14, 15. That was in Croatia. She is a talented 1-meter diver. Very nice front 2.5 from Beatrice, or I'm sorry, Viola here. 6.5s for her. Solid start for the front 2.5. And she's climbing her way back into the competition here. She's currently sitting in second place with 271, just ahead of Zoe Lundin. Very nice dive from Jessica. Inward 1.5 pike, really well executed. She should get some decent scores here. 6.5s, 1.7 there. She should be happy with that. Inward 1.5. We have Nicole from Switzerland. Had a little bit of a misstep last round. We'll be looking to pick up a few more points here. Okay, and as we can see, we were talking a little bit about that positioning. If that pike doesn't get really tight, that means the radius of your body is still long, which means the spin, the angular momentum of your spinning flip is going to be a little bit lower, and so it's more difficult to make some of these rotations. Um, so Nicole having a little bit of difficulty coming all the way around to 1.5. Yuna doing reverse 1.5, having a little bit of a trouble there on that hurdle. As you can see, her upper body is kind of tipping forward. You can see it's almost over the edge of the board here as she's taking off. And so that makes it really difficult to generate some speed backwards. And that might be some of uh, there's threes we've been seeing today. Difficult start there for Yuna. Well, on her takeoff, leaving her short of vertical with her 3.5s. Back 1.5 pike. Again, the reverse and the backs being in pike are a little bit new for Zoe, but it looks like she's been working really hard. Very nice pike shape and come out for Zoe. Maybe a little short of vertical, so she's not going to get those sevens, but still should be very proud of these 6.5s for her. Very nice lines. Really striving to reach for that water behind her. Very powerful jump from Vilma here. Maybe not quite as fast of a spin as she would have liked, leaving her a little short of vertical. Still on the 5.5s. Like I said, Vilma, very solid diving today. Maybe not something that she can really say was her best dive of the day, but she has had zero misses, so she's right in there fighting for a way to move up in the standings. Aliana, inward dive, inward 1.5 pike. And there we go. Really, really close to the board here. Probably not a dangerous distance at all, but you've seen some of our other divers try to push further away from the board. Aliana doing a really good job of standing up there and trying to line that dive up without being too far away from the board. 6s and 7s for her. Decent dive. Got Nina, our current leader, front 2.5 pike. You can see the judges will be looking at even just these walking lines as she's walking. As you can see, she's got very straight arms as she's walking along the board, pointing her toes in her hurdle. Very nice. Oh, and that is a little bit of a miss for Nina. While she does have a very high jump, she doesn't really stop the rotation coming out of this 2.5. So as you can see, her feet are flying by vertical here. You get that big splash to the left there. So she's going to probably come back down to earth with the rest of the divers. As she was our leader by a bit. Now there's only a 4-point separation between her and Zoe, where there was a larger gap from the previous round. Got Lita doing the same dive. Similar issue on the ending there, but manages to save it a little bit better. So she is a little past vertical, but managing to save it a little more. So she's going to get those 6.5s as opposed to what Nina received. We've got Caitlin doing the same dive. Lita actually moving into first place after that dive there. So we're going to have an interesting final round here. Oh, Caitlin, same kind of issue that Nina had. They're generating a lot of height, a lot of speed here, and then just not quite finishing this dive here to a straight position, stopping their rotation and getting into the water before those feet pass by vertical. So Caitlin struggling a little bit on that dive. She moves into a fourth place. Now we have Viola, reverse 1.5 with 1.5 twists here. Oh, this is Beatrice. I'm sorry. Viola is coming right after Beatrice. We saw Viola do this similar dive earlier, but with a half twist. Beatrice doing it with 1.5 twists, again with a little bit higher of a DD. Increasing that potential for maximum score here. Very nice dive by Beatrice. maybe a little quick off the board here. So as you can see, she's not getting as much height as she might do with other dives, but still very high scoring dive, 45 points. Now Viola doing a back 1.5. And as we finish out these final divers of round 8, we're going to be able to take a look at kind of where they match up going into the final round and have kind of idea what the divers are going to need to do um, in the following round to really fight out for those podium spots. Viola doing a very solid job here. You can see there might be a little hesitation on this entry into the water here. You can see her body kind of relax going through the water. She's not going to get those sevens going in. So you see a little extra splash there, maybe lacking some body tension. But Viola's going to be right up there. As we can see, our 1 through 5 almost, I would say 1 through 4 have a pretty good shot on this last round. Jessica, beautiful reverse 1.5 here. Maybe arching a little bit too much on the end there, letting her feet pass by vertical, but should still get some decent scores here, 6.5. Our last diver of round 8, Nicole from Switzerland. Doing the same dive we just saw, but in the tuck position, so bending at the knees. Now again, that tuck position it makes it easier to spin as the radius is smaller in tuck versus pike, not needing as much energy or angular momentum to make it around. Some of the divers will elect to do it in tuck instead of pike, just so the dive becomes easier. So as you can see, maybe by the far wall, oh, we have it up on the screen here. We've got Lida actually as our leader here with 316, but Nina just behind her with 314, Zoe 310. And then as you can see, we've got Viola at 308. But as you can see, less than 10 points separating 4 to 1. That is possible to make up in the last rounds, especially if somebody happens to miss a dive here. And we've got Yuna doing a very fine front 1.5 with full twist, just under the 300 points. So she doesn't reach our leaders yet, unfortunately. They with one more dive to go. But Yuna can be proud of her solid diving list so far. Zoe with an inward 1.5 pike, and we're now going to see some of these degree of difficulties come into play here as their max scores are different. Zoe having a very nice inward 1.5, maybe a little past vertical here, but she, as by virtue of the first 4, is the one that's going to set the bar. So all of the other divers need to hit 357 if they're going to go past her. And in many cases, that can put a lot of pressure on the divers. And if they start to feel that pressure, it can increase the chances for mistakes. So sometimes it can be advantageous to dive first. All right, Vilma, very nice inward 1.5, just like Zoe. Very solid jump here, very strong, straight 6s for her. 296. Like we said, Vilma, no big mistakes for her today. She can be proud of a very solid list, keeping that 5.5, 6 average all the way through the entire list. We have Aliana. Very nice dive. And so this front 2.5 in comparison to the inward 1.5 we've just been seeing has a slightly higher degree of difficulty. So you can see that max score be a little bit higher, even if they're getting the same raw score as those 6s, 6.5. You're going to see that total score bump from maybe 44 to 49 points just by virtue of the degree of difficulty. Now we've got Nina, who was our leader through all the first 7 rounds, falling just back a little bit in round 8. She'll want to do a really good inward here to see if she can move past. That will be better than Zoe's, and Zoe was just slightly behind Nia last time, so she's going to move past Zoe into that last round. She will be our current leader, with Lida still to come. And so now we'll get to see Lida doing the exact same dive. So if she can match those 7s that Nina got, she will be our winner here. So let's see what we do. I think that will do it. That should be 7s for her. And she did have a 2-point cushion here. So even if she's getting a half point lower on these raw scores, or one of her raw scores, I should say, she will move past Nina. Let's see what the judges thought here. I would say that should be about sevens. And we do have a little pause here. Um, Trying to figure out what the pause. Oh, it might be one of the judges' pads. We use electric judging pads, meaning the judges have a wireless score pad that they can push in. And like I said, those sevens and 7.5s just squeak her by Nina, moving her into that first gold medal position. With just Viola to come, that has a decent shot at catching her. And Viola will actually need a really, really big dive to get into first. Caitlin doing a fantastic reverse 1.5, even with that hurdle. As you can see, her feet are a little far back from the end of the board. See where she lands with these 2 feet here? She's maybe 10 to 20 centimeters back, but does a great job of generating power and height there. Rewarded with 6.5s, them sixes there. So very nice finish for Caitlin. Unfortunately, just going to be outside of that podium, most likely in 5th or 6th place. Beatrice, inward 1.5. Very nice dive. Very good finish for Beatrice. I know we had a little bit of a miss with that back 1.5, so Beatrice will be looking to climb up past a couple of these competitors, and she's currently in 4th with Viola and Jessica to come. We'll see what they can do. Um, Viola is doing an inward 1.5 pike here, and so in comparison to some of the other divers that had a 2.6, this one is a 2.4, which will be multiplied by that raw score. She'll need some very, very large scores here to see if she can catch um, the podium places. First place might be a little difficult, but bronze is still in the mix here. And that's a very good dive for Viola. We're going to see, she's going to need over 7.5. She just squeaks in there, just past Zoe. So she's going to get 360 points. Zoe, unfortunately, falling out of that bronze medal position, but very good list for Zoe. She can be really proud of the dives that she did today, just falling out of that 1, 2, 3 spot for that snöplig fjärde plats, as we say here in Sweden. Jessica doing it back 1.5. We saw Caitlin do this reverse. Jessica electing to do it backwards. Difficult dive to complete both 1.5 back rotations and 1.5 twists. Jessica getting a very good score here, 6.6, 5.5, 43 points for her. She's going to end up in 8th place there. Saw the list for a lot of these ladies. In actuality, we haven't really seen any disasters or misses for them today. Maybe some small ones, but for the most part, this was a very, very tough competition. So all of these ladies, albeit maybe they didn't get the placing that they had intended or desired, should be very proud of the list that they've done today. Really, really great diving. High class for these ladies today. Nicole finishing off with an inward 1.5. Again, doing it in tuck where some of the others were doing in pike. But really nice finish for her, 6, 5.5. She'll finish in 11th place, but these ladies, like I said, did a fantastic job. And congratulations to Lita of the Netherlands, our gold medalist. Nina in 2nd place, silver. Viola in 3rd place, bronze. And Zoe in that 4th spot. So there might be something to Lita and her lucky necklace, which has a diver and a 4-leaf clover as a charm. She's got an orange chamois that she always uses as well, and it looks like she's going to study in the U.S. next year. So very much good luck to her. It looks like she's got a bright future ahead of her. Congratulations to Lita, and congratulations to the rest of our competitors. It was a very tough competition. As you can see, the first four spots are right around 360, and then 5 through 8 is not much far away from 340 or above. So big fight there. Not so many points dividing the ladies in between here. Thank you all for tuning in. We